What's up and welcome back. It's the end of the world as we know it. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, and well, this is the end. This is it. We reached it. I'm gonna keep reviewing movies though after this, so it's not really the end of anything. It's just the movie called The End, directed by Joshua Oppenheimer. This movie's being released by Neon. It jumped around some film festivals, Telluride, TIFF. Um, It did not make Venice, and there was some buzz that this film was not good because it did not make Venice. Also, notably, Hard Truths did not make Venice, but I think we all kind of came along and were like, why the fuck did it not make Venice? Seems to be the general reaction to Hard Truths. So just sometimes because the Venice, board didn't pick it doesn't necessarily mean the film isn't good. Um, I will say I don't think The End is for everybody. We've got Tilda Swinton, Michael Shannon, George McKay, and Moses Ingram are sort of the big four here. And it's an apocalyptic musical, but it's not quite as fun as that sounds. Because I know immediately, if you haven't seen this movie yet, you were like, "Oh my God, is it Repo?" No, it's not Repo. Um, I liked the movie better. I was not provided audio description for this, even though I reached out to Neon individually because last year they did provide me with audio description. This year I was like, "Hey, can I get it?" And then they're like, yeah, forwarding on to it. Never, no. Okay, well, and I'm voting for more groups, so it's more important to anyway. No, Neon, you dropped the ball on this one, man. I don't know what to tell you. But this takes place in some sort of apocalyptic future. We're not really sure because we're sort of shown uh this it's a wealthy family, and obviously they live in what is an extensive bunker. And they have other help. The actors are not as well known. I'm sorry, I just shafted all of them, but there's like they have like a chef, a doctor, and a butler. The chef is also like a friend of Tilda Swinton's. She's not quite like the help, but she is billed as also being like a friend to Tilda Swinton. And then also, because George McKay has no one to talk to, a friend of George McKay's character, who's like the youngest one. He's the child for Michael Shannon and Tilda Swinton, who's been growing up in this. I actually understood quite a bit of this movie, despite the audio description, mainly because it is still a musical, so they sing a lot through song. It's also a very explanative movie in that it has a point and a purpose. Joshua Oppenheimer, this is his narrative feature debut. He's somebody who likes to direct documentaries, which means he's somebody who really understands what the world looks like when it's on fire, and he's trying to sort of relay that to us through this movie. What have we done? What have we caused? How do we get here? Those are the things that we're going to learn. Um, what is the grand lesson of this movie? And it's just going to take a tediously 2.5 hour long runtime to get there, which is a lot. But we do get introduced to this family. There are songs here. I've heard them criticized for not being memorable, which is also sort of the same thing that I've heard about Emilio Perez, which I think is really unfair because Emilio Perez is like currently shortlisted for 2 original song nominations, but the way that its songs are, yeah, they're not quite bombastic like your typical Broadway musical songs, but I didn't think anything different between Emilio Perez and The End's music. Um, they just sort of organically come out of musicals. And I work in theater and I have kids trying to show me these weird sort of like concept musicals. And I listen to them all the time. I'm like, what is this? So I think this is just where the future of music theater is going because I'm listening to stuff like Epic the Musical. I'm like, what is this musical? What draws you to this? This is so like, it's almost atonal. Like, what do you, so yeah, there isn't that defying gravity moment here, but at the same time, I didn't hate any of the music. It's just, yeah, this would be a really hard thing to be like, oh, remember that song, because you'd have to be like, well, remember when he was singing about this, or remember when she was doing that. Like you'd have to kind of like put the context, because there isn't a song with like a banger chorus, which honestly, uh hearing the nominees out of Amelia Perez, I couldn't pick them. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't even, um you know, they weren't even the ones that I remembered from the musical. Like I I I didn't have an experience with Mi Camino, but I guess other people did. So yeah, I don't. I'm not really sure. As somebody who loves musicals, I thought they sounded nice. They're very almost quasi powdery songs at times, so they're not. They're doing a lot of speak singing. It's not really difficult stuff, but these are not singers. These are not people who are known for singing. Although I will say Moses Ingram has a very lovely voice. And so does George McKay. Like the two of them probably could have been given harder stuff to do. But I think they were a little bit worried about Michael and Tilda and how far they could push their voices. So the whole thing changes. It's this weird thing where you're following a family and then their life changes when somebody gets introduced, which is Moses Ingram, who's a girl who kind of shows up outside, and obviously changes the family dynamic, which is a pretty obvious way to how to throw chaos into this structured lifestyle. They've been underground for like 20 years, living, I guess, presumably from some sort of like nuclear fallout, except for Moses Ingram seems to be fine. But Moses doesn't really come into the thing and contradict. It's not like her character comes in and is like, by the way, there's no apocalypse. I don't know why you guys are down here. Like, I was just wandering and I stumbled, no, I mean, she confirms it, like, yeah, life's not great. Uh, but she kind of looks at the opulence and is like, how couldn't you have put more people down here? Did you not have more friends or family than this that you wanted to? She kind of looks at the potential for rescuing people, sort of like they have Noah's Ark, but only Noah's family is on Noah's Ark, and you're kind of like, but more people could have fit on the Ark, right? Like, if they'd wanted, if they had joined, would you've let them, you know? Yeah, so it's really sort of just limited to this family, and then there's some interesting stuff that sort of plays out from there as she continues to sort of disrupt the natural order of this family. There's some really interesting choices that they make here. Like, I guess since the world has ended, it doesn't really matter what George McKay knows or learns. So he doesn't know history. He's literally like writing the history books. So his family has given him sort of like a verbal history of where like supposedly their lives have come from. But is it true? I mean, everybody has just told him, but he's not like reading the great novels. He's not reading textbooks or anything like that. He's getting very odd knowledge, which is what I think Moses is also picking up on. So, I found this movie oddly compelling, even though it is long and the music is not really memorable, but I didn't hate any of it. Like, it's sort of the same thing I felt about Emilio Perez, where it's like, well, I don't really feel a standout song here, but it's not like I'm listening to music that makes me want to punch babies. I think both of these musicals don't really need Best Original Song nominations, because I think it's really hard to remember any of the songs from these musicals. So, they're not written in the standard way. So, that you would, where you remember it later on, like Let It Go, or I don't know, Circle of Life, stuff like that. Just things from Disney musicals where they have this grand chorus and you just hear it and you're like, oh my god, it's that song. I just don't know what's going to happen for these musicals. But I like the cast. I thought the acting was good. I do need the audio description to bring in some context, but because there's a lot of singing, they actually flesh out quite a bit through dialogue and song. So it's not quite as I wasn't quite as lost. I would still say my grade is going to be unwatchable due to lack of audio description, because like I didn't understand what the style, like what did their place look like? You know, I didn't understand how many rooms, where were they going. It wasn't. It's not really until Moses mentioned something about them living in this, you know, mentioning something about the size of the place or whatever, that you really sort of understood and understand without audio description as a blind person that maybe perhaps they're living in sort of this much larger structure, somehow underground. And then later, by the end of the movie, there's more context that's given. I'm just not spoiling for you. So, um, yeah, I'd love to see this movie with audio description. I think critically, this movie's getting lambasted. I don't mind standing by it. I think I enjoyed it. And to be fair, honestly, I like big swings. I like when directors take risks. My worst films of the year are not the ones that you would peg. I would much rather watch things like The End, Joker Folie à Deux, and Megalopolis again that feel like somebody's trying to do something with them in a weird and interesting way than I would like incredibly derivative films that serve no purpose, like Tarot, Strangers Chapter 1, that aren't pushing any new boundaries and are just retreading old ones, and they're doing a really poor job of it. Films that should come off an assembly line and feel like at least on the same level as something like Canary Black, where it just feels like every other action movie you've ever seen before, but it isn't just like god awful unwatchable. The films that somehow manage to retread every step that's ever laid before them, but yet also somehow be awful at doing it, those are the films that really piss me off. The films where a director is doing something that is like against the grain, that there's at least something fascinating in watching them do it. And then, but I would argue, at least with Megalopolis and Joker, that I can't say either one of those is a good movie. But I did actually enjoy The End, and I enjoyed The End also while understanding it's one of the more original things I've seen this year. So, could have been a little shorter. I was not expecting 2.5 hours. It kind of felt like it was dragging along a little bit. That's probably my biggest concern is Joshua didn't need 2.5 hours to get this movie kicked out. But yeah, sadly, this movie's not really going anywhere. I don't know where my grade would end up because it doesn't have audio description and Neon ignored me. So my grade is unwatchable due to lack of audio description. If I gave it a floating grade, like a what's the vibe you're feeling? I'm feeling maybe like a B plus. I could go down to a B, A minus, somewhere around there. But I generally liked it, and I don't think audio description is gonna wildly change my opinion on that. But runtime is a thing, and actually that's gonna be the problem too. I should acknowledge it could actually be more like a B. Is in order to now watch the film again, I have to watch with audio description. And when you rewatch a film that you're already acknowledging length is a problem, sometimes that second viewing is not as rewarding, because then you have to sit through another film that you have to sit through the film again that you already feel like is stretching your time, while also commenting on the preciousness of time, which is hilarious. Anyway, um, so that's the end of the review. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you guys on the other side.